Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Tonight is about more than nominations. It is about how we identify, call, and develop leaders in a way that strengthens the church. If we do this well, we just don't fill roles, we build people. Next slide. So, our purpose this evening is we're going to guide it by three key pillars that help guide leadership development approach. And the first one would be to identify. That will be discover and recognize potential leaders within our community through careful observation and discernment. The second pillar would be nominate, formally recognize and invite individuals to take on leadership roles with intention and purpose. And then the third pillar would be to develop. This is by providing ongoing support, training, and mentorship to help leaders grow in their roles. And so we want to make sure that we ground you in what the nominations and lay leadership committee does and why it is so important. And so at this time, we're going to have Mark walk us through that.
Okay. So it's a great opportunity when a person is invited to serve within the life of the church. It's an expression of their faithfulness because we are claimed in the waters of our baptism for life within God's kingdom. We're called to live out our baptismal covenant through acts of loving kindness and generosity and servant leadership. This happens within the church, but also beyond the church. Obviously, for us within the United Methodist Church, we have a particular understanding. It doesn't mean it's better or worse than in other churches, but we do have a particular understanding of church governance in which we have specific committees and boards as laid out by the Book of Discipline. But each local church also has the capacity to develop other ministry teams and committees as well. And so this work that the nominations and leadership development committee team does, it's not just on behalf of your local church to which you are a part, but really it's to bear witness to all of God's kingdom, but also in connection with our other United Methodist churches too. So it's important to realize this because some people think that the work of nominations is just putting names in a blank spot on a sheet of paper or just shuffling names around on a form. But there's really so much more to that. We're eager to identify, like it was said before, people who have a unique gifting to serve. And sometimes it involves identifying giftedness in somebody that they may not recognize at first. Um, and in this way, the committee can really make a profound impact on a person's life. Somebody might be called to serve and they didn't see it coming. They might be generally, quite frankly, honored and grateful. Um, it's wonderful when a person can have his or her gifts identified and claimed by the life of the church, which is totally different than somebody just, presuming that they're going to be on a committee or asserting themselves. Um, it doesn't work that way for us in the United Methodist Church. The role of the nominations committee is found most notably when a slate of officers is presented at charge conference every year, and there is a vote putting these people into office starting in the new year. In this way, we have a democratic style of local church governance where people represent one another for the life of the church. We don't have church-wide votes. We don't have congregational votes. We have committees that do the work. I've heard one pastor put it this way. I thought it was pretty insightful. He said, "We have worriers who are designated so that you don't have to worry." So, for example, if there's an issue with the leak that is in the women's bathroom and it's causing an issue, You don't need to worry about that. We have the trustees. They're going to take care of that. The list goes on. Designated people who are nominated by your group, but then voted upon through the charge conference. And it's worth noting that the charge conference is really an important ministry because it represents the connectional nature of the church and the commitments that we make to one another, for one another. I just want to read a brief little part out of the Book of Discipline. Okay. The latest version of the Book of Discipline is the 2020/24 Book of Discipline. As you know, General Conference happened in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2024. It was the 2020/24 combined General Conference, and it's at that meeting that the Book of Discipline is rewritten. And we get our marching orders from how this book lays out how our committees are to be organized. There are some particularities, and you could read about them in the book. I'm not going to take your time with all of that, but there's also space for creativity too. But here's this one part that I want to be sure to read for you. This is paragraph 340 under number 2, letter C, A. Okay. This is talking about the responsibility of appointed clergy. It includes giving pastoral support, guidance, and training to the lay leadership, equipping them to fulfill the ministry to which they are called. I read that because your appointed pastor is the chairperson of this committee. It is the only committee to which your appointed pastor is the chairperson. And very explicitly, it's the role of the pastor through the work of the committee to, again, give pastoral support, guidance, and training to the lay leadership, equipping them to fulfill the ministry to which they are called. I want to invite Shareka to share a testimony that I think you'll find inspiring about how this happened and the impact it had on her life. Shareka?
Yes, I would have to say, being a member of my church has definitely helped me grow. Being in the United Methodist Church, basically, I've been a member of my church for a while, probably since around the age of 2. However, going off to school, um, I came back home because I was one of those college students. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually majored in political science pre-law, got into law school, and decided I did not want to go to law school. So, of course, my mom was like, come back home, we'll figure it out. So, arrived back to Winston-Salem, and after that, just started, attending church on a regular basis. And at that time, my pastor saw something in me that I probably would not have actually volunteered to do. I had been home probably about a year, and at the time, we had a vibrant youth ministry. It wasn't, um, I wouldn't say it wasn't not vibrant, but we had up and coming, it was growing. And so at the time, there were only a male representation as a leader for it. And but at this time, it was being very heavy with females. And so they pastor felt like they needed some female representation. And so he asked me along with my twin sister to serve on the youth ministry. And I would have to say, serving in leadership within the church, that development, that opportunity, being fresh out of college, being paired with seasoned and veteran people, church members who have already have been working in with the youth ministry for a number of years, but being able to bring that multi-generational opportunity played a great deal with my leadership development. And so I was able to eventually, just after serving probably about 3 or 4 years, began to oversee our youth ministry. And so I say that because at the time, I would not have volunteered if my pastor at the time had not just said, "Hey, we need some help. Why don't you think about it and, start doing it?" I would say, like I said, serving in leadership within the church has played a significant role in my professional development. What began as a calling to serve quickly became a space where I developed practical skills that I now use every day. Um, my current professional career is I serve as a director of a trio federal program that I serve students who are first generational college students, students who are low income, and students with documented disability. Through my church leadership, I gained experience with working with budgets, making thoughtful decisions, and being accountable for resources. I also had the opportunity to help develop others, learning how to identify strengths in people, being able to invite them into leadership and support their growth, allowing me to be able to develop the developmental programs. I had the opportunity to attend conferences as well as other professional developments that the United Methodist Church had sponsored. But most importantly, this journey helped solidify my own calling as a leader. It pushed me to grow in my confidence. It helped me make decisions with clarity, and it made me be able to lead with a purpose. The lessons I've learned in ministry, by leading a ministry, has even helped me gain by moving into other ministry positions within the church. It helped me with my stewardship, helped me with developing, and then in making sure that I was intentional about how I worked with my church members and the people in my ministry and on my committee. It really helped shape how I lead now, professional in my professional position. Um, so I look at the opportunity that my first leadership position was actually in church. And so if it had not been for the foundation that I received in church, I don't think I would be successful in my professional career as a leader. And so for me, it was someone saw something that made the ask, and it changed everything for me. That's why I think nominations and how lay leadership, the committee, and the ministry needs to focus, because if it had not been for the ask and then for the training and the development and the opportunity to lead, I don't think that I would have been able to, survive and be successful in my current professional career, because I'm able to utilize those skills that I've learned in church to help me be a better leader when it comes to my professional career.
So just imagine if all of our churches had stories like Shareka's, young people who were encouraged, affirmed, invited to serve, given an opportunity. How much more wonderful would this world be, right? That's a different approach, isn't it, than scrambling to try to find a name or begging someone to stay on the committee for another year. Um, but what does it mean to notice people, to affirm them, to give them an opportunity? We're going to shift now and talk a little bit about best practices. A few things that I'm going to share, and also some things that Shareka will share too. Um, First, what I'd like to share is really about it's not on the screen right now. Um, so I'm going to stop share for just a moment, and then we'll go back to the share. Um, what I'd like to do is talk about a few items with you. Um, First of all, in terms of best practices, confidentiality is critical. Now, remember, confidentiality means keeping faith with other people. That's literally what the word means. It's not simply keeping secrets. Keeping secrets, that's what kids on the playground do in elementary school. But we're talking about keeping faith with others. We're talking about things and people. And that needs to be held in a high degree of trust with one another. That needs to be established at the very beginning of every single meeting. It may seem perfunctory, it might seem like common sense, but it needs to be stated explicitly at the beginning of each meeting the importance of confidentiality. Some committees will even invite each person to sign a confidentiality agreement. I think that's a good idea. And it could be simple, just two sentences, and everybody signs the same sheet of paper agreeing to confidentiality. It means we're not going to talk about outside the meeting what's talked about within the meeting. We're not going to talk about it with our spouse or our children or our best friend, the coffee club, the book club, the Bible study. No, we're not talking about it. That is really important. Something else I want to mention in terms of best practices is a timeline about when to meet, because I know sometimes, perhaps due to the busyness of one's schedule, or just some people are overwhelmed with expectations and tasks, sometimes the nominations committee only meets right before a charge conference in order to just throw together some names on a sheet of paper. Um, I think you're on this Zoom call because you recognize there's got to be a better way. Here's what I simply want to invite you to think about. What does it look like for the nominations and leadership development team to meet throughout the year? Um, Here we are, the middle of February. I'm sorry, February, April. We're in the middle of April. It's not too early to start. In fact, for some committees, it's too late. But if you were to start now, you could build the foundation of trust with one another and start moving forward on the very important task of nominations. I think that when you start early, then you give yourself plenty of time to discern, to pray, to be in conversation. And something else, you might even have time to do another best practice, which is writing letters to people who are nominated. This is something that I've heard of other churches doing, and I've tried to do it, but it just takes time. Um, just think about this, okay? Suppose you're being nominated to serve on, say, Pastor Parish Relations, PPRC. It's one thing if someone just kind of grabs you by the elbow after Sunday school and says, "Hey, can you serve on PPRC?" Or what if you get a handwritten note in the mail saying, "Our nominations and leadership development team has met. We've been praying about people who could step up and serve. Your name was mentioned for this committee. I invite you to consider this, pray about it. I'll call you in 2 weeks and we can talk more." Wouldn't that be better? Can't you imagine how much more a person would feel appreciated and affirmed? How much more they would appreciate the role that they're saying yes to? But you need time to build that out. You can't just cram it into a couple of weekends leading up to charge conference. Something else too is, um, I think, as we all know, the year 2020 was a very difficult year because of COVID-19, trying to figure out how are we going to do church. 2021, still another difficult year. We don't need to go back and rehearse all the reasons why. But here's something that I've noticed. I think some pastors slipped into the role of being like the benevolent dictator running the church. I'm not saying every pastor, every church, I'm saying there are just a few examples where this is the case. So instead of calling together the committee, the pastor instead just said, "I'll just ask people to serve on the committee." And the work of the committee collapsed into the role of the pastor. Please hear me. That may have needed to happen a year or two because of extreme circumstances with COVID, that's in the past. If your church has somehow sadly slipped into that way of operating for nominations, let 2026 be the year that you turn the page and you get back on track with how the committee ought to function. That includes developing a culture of call and discernment of spiritual gifts. Having that be a part of the language. Some churches go so far as to offer spiritual gifts inventories, studies of the fruit of the Spirit, so that people can discern for themselves, but then we can start to name in other people. I think that's another really important thing. There's one more best practice that I want to share, and then I'm going to go back to the screen share, and Shareka will talk more. Imagine your committee creating two lists. One list is of people who are overutilized. The other list, people who are underutilized. This is objective. We're not judging. We're not complaining. We're not doing anything speaking against a person's character. All we're doing is we're observing, wow, you know what? If you think about it, Marty sure is on a lot of committees, isn't he? He's the president of the United Methodist Men. He what else? He's chair of the board of trustees. He's the lay leader. He's the person that we call if we can't turn on the heat on Sunday morning. My goodness, Marty's doing a lot. Thank God for Marty. And we all have people in our churches like that, right? So, who are the overutilized people? Here's why that list is important. When it comes to doing the hard work of nominations, maybe you want to think twice about drawing from people on that list. If you could just name it before you even get started, this person is overutilized. Likewise, who are the underutilized people? The people who you see regularly in worship, people who are counted as faithful, but my goodness, they haven't really stepped up to serve yet. Who might those people be? Those are people who I think you would want to invite into an opportunity to serve. All right, we're going to. Um, all right, here. Oh, wait, I think. Oh, there it was, Sharika. All the things I was going to talk about is on this screen. Oh, well, here,
You're
I'll show it
fine.
for just a moment. I'll show it for just a moment. But here's that screen of what I was just talking through. Okay. All right, Sharika, it's you.
All right. So we've talked about some best practices. Now let's talk about what this looks like in real relationships and leadership position when it comes to how our ministry leaders and chairs plan and work together. And so it's very important that you think about as an individual who's coming into leadership, if you are coming behind someone, how does that look? And so oftentimes we often forget that this may be someone's first time in a leadership position. So it's important that we kind of help guide them. And by doing that, creating a leadership playbook, what it does, it helps people and it doesn't leave the next person guessing on what I may need to do. So, key things that you can include in that playbook, whether it be on a USB drive or whether it be a binder, or what are some key responsibilities as the leader of that ministry or chairperson of that ministry or committee has to do. Include a calendar, annual calendar of major events that you may have, that ministry or committee may have done prior. Also include contact numbers as well as maybe some partnerships of other ministries or outside agencies that you may have worked with. And then make a list of what worked and what didn't work. And then include in that important documents or templates or anything like that. And that allows the individual who's coming behind you not have to start from scratch. And that means if they don't have to start from scratch, their momentum is not lost on what I actually need to be doing. The second part was be to identify a successor early, making sure that leadership is temporary, but plan for what's next. And so oftentimes we have individuals that serve on these ministries and committees with us that we need to be making sure that we are watching to see what potential leaders are on our committees and ministry already, who are already doing the work. So when it's time for me or whomever to move out of that leadership position, there's someone already on the committee who can move up to the leadership position. And in the time that you're looking and searching for potential leaders, invite them into small responsibilities first by saying, hey, can you work with so and so to assist with this? And then make sure that we're having real conversations about future leadership. Even if it's something that we don't turn around right then, but what do we see our ministry or our committee doing in the next 3 to 5 years? And so having those real conversations with not only just your committee, but also the church as a whole. And so what you're doing is you're not waiting until the end and making feeling like is you're rushed and then there's weak transitions. And back to what Mark said, just by putting names on a list or on that sheet to get ready for charge conference. The third thing would be to support the transition. Um, don't disappear, but also don't be in control. You're no longer the chairperson or the leader of that committee or ministry, but support the transition by staying on the committee and serving in that ministry. Your role after stepping down could be to be available for questions, to share some insight when needed, but the biggest thing is to make sure that you're there to encourage that next person who has came after you. Not to direct and have your hands all in it, but also to be a support. You are a support system for the next person, not the leader anymore. The fourth thing is to be intentional about inviting others. Remember, people just don't show up. You have to call them. That was me. I I had to be asked. I wasn't going to volunteer unless I was asked. So what do we need to do? Sometimes a personal invitation to people to serve, like Mark stated, a nice invitation, a nice letter or a postcard inviting individuals to serve goes a long way. But also make sure that you're specific about why you're asking them. I saw something in you. I see potential in you to lead. So make sure that you're specific on why you're asking them to be a leader and to take on this committee or this ministry. And then always follow up after your initial ask. Um, and then we need to make sure this is where that intergenerational concept comes in. Make sure that we're focused on our young adults and youth and how they can serve. And then if you have new members who are just now coming into your church, this is a great opportunity to have them serve and ask them to serve as a committee member. And then look out for people who are in your congregation that may not be currently serving. And then you may have to have a conversation as to why they are not serving and what may be their take back for not doing it. The fifth thing was be sure to engage and develop young leaders. Inclusion isn't enough. We have to make sure that development of our leaders is our goal. And sometimes starting with our young adults is a great opportunity. Um, Giving them real responsibility, not just small tasks, but giving them some responsibilities, but also not leaving them out by not making say, oh no, they're not ready. Maybe this is an opportunity for them to be paired with a mentor or someone who's um, a veteran at the church or someone who's been a seasoned church member, inviting them and pairing them up, but also creating a space for their voices and ideas to be heard. We oftentimes, some churches may push back on allowing their young adults to serve, and it's because, oh, they're not going to do it the way we've done it in previous years. And sometimes having that reality check to say that we're not only observing, we are here to help develop. And so that's the whole goal of churches is you utilize your young people to help to develop them so that eventually they'll be able to serve and take lead on certain things when it comes to the ability to lead and serve in certain ministries. Also, making sure that we do strong onboarding, setting people up to succeed from day one. And so that means making sure that you communicate clearly on what the expectations are in the beginning. And that comes from the nominations committee by outlining what are the expectations for this ministry and for being in this leadership position. And what's the time commitment? As you know, a lot of people still work full time. So, what would be the time commitment? And then also go ahead and develop goals and the purpose of the ministry. All of this should already be outlined so that when the next person comes in ahead of or behind you, that success is already defined for that ministry or committee. And then always make sure that you're able to provide a point of contact for them to be able to utilize and if they have questions. And I think the biggest thing is allowing the opportunity for training. I think that is one area that the United Methodist Church does really, really well, is that we have the opportunity to not only have training within our churches, but also on the district as well as on the conference level. So there's trainings just for about every ministry that we have within our churches. It's just, are we taking advantage of those opportunities? And then making sure that we encourage. Leadership is hard. And as you know, all of our positions are voluntary. And so being able to make sure that we're encouraging individuals when there may be, and having that sympathy and empathy that obviously there may be something going on and not being so hard on an individual, but also utilizing that encouragement to help make sure that even if they're lacking in some areas, making sure that you're able to assist them in those areas. And sometimes it's hard for people to ask for help, but being able to have that relationship with them and staying on board with them actually helps with that. And so it is very, very important that we look at these areas because confusion will lead to disengagement, but clarity will build confidence in your leaders. And so when you think about the development of how we look at when we look at teams, one of the areas at my church, at the church that I attend and I serve in a leadership position, we do an annual planning retreat where we get all of our ministry leaders together, we get our committee members together, and we develop a month to month plan, meaning we plan for the whole year. We set aside a dedicated time, whether it be a half day or a full day, and we map out the full ministry calendar for the year. We identify key seasons and priorities, and then we build in those rest periods so that we don't overload people. And so by getting our ministries leaders together and our committees together and planning out the year, we see where there's no overlap. And but then there's also an opportunity for ministries and committees to collaborate. And so the real focus is to be proactive but not reactive. And this really, really matters by not having last minute planning, which can create stress and allow weak execution to come. So being able to plan the year out, knowing what each ministry or committee is doing, and not overlapping and overloading people. Number two, always make sure that we're planning with the whole church in mind. This will avoid you having silos, and always think bigger than the committee or ministry. This helps make identify major church-wide events early, like church anniversary. I think about our church, St. Paul here in Winston-Salem is getting ready to celebrate 155 years. We were planning 2 years ago for our 155th. We're already planned our 155th church anniversary for June. We're already thinking about what are we doing for the 156th. And so being able to have those identify major events that are going to come, but planning ahead. And then that helps with coordinating dates and giving roles across the ministries. For church anniversary, we have to utilize just about every ministry that we have at St. Paul. And so being able to have and coordinate with the across the ministries to make sure that that church-wide event is successful. And then look for neutral partnerships that comes with music, our outreach mission ministry, our hospitality. Because, hey, you're going to have a church-wide event like that. You need to make sure that your hospitality team is on board and can provide the meal or however you want to make sure you're going to have a dynamic worship service. So making sure that the music is vital and vibrant on that church anniversary Sunday. And so once again, I use the example of our church anniversary. It shouldn't be owned by one group. Yes, we are a church anniversary committee, but we make sure that we coordinate across the church to ensure that this is an impactful event. And then prioritize collaboration. Strong ministries don't compete, they actually connect. And that means that we invite other leaders into our planning conversations. Share calendars and make sure that you're talking early to make sure that you're able to do that collaboration. And then make sure that you're aligning goals across ministries to ensure that collaboration can take place. This can help when it comes to being disconnected with planning, which will come with low participation, as well as ministry leaders or chair people being burned out. The next thing could be making sure that we build strong functional teams. The goal is just not to have activities, but it's to provide healthy teamwork. We make sure that you're able to define clear roles within the committee or the ministry and be sure to match people up with their strengths, which is why it's very important for our churches and congregations to look at that spiritual gifts inventory to see how can we match individuals up to be able to display their strengths. And then encouraging a shared ownership, not one person doing everything. Like Mark stated, if you got one person doing four and five things, then good for them, but how is the church really functioning if something was to happen to that individual? Teamwork works well together, not just by getting things done. It's able to make sure that we execute. And I feel like sometimes when you're able to execute and work as a team, it also brings that spirit of excellence that most of our churches want to ensure that we're doing. The other thing is make sure that we're thinking forward and not just about now. Always be providing and looking ahead. What are we going to do in the next few months? You know, summer is getting ready to start, and we know that vacations are coming up. And so a lot of us may see that our declining attendance. So, what are we doing to look? How we're going to make sure that even attendance may be low, but is tithing still going to be able to be provided if so and so doesn't attend church? Think about the anticipated needs and challenges and what resources would you need to make sure that you're able to sponsor those church-wide events. And then always make sure that there's a debrief opportunity to say what worked well and what are some things that we need to work on. This also helps with future planning. Um, Being able to ensure that we are not rushing but also making sure that we're not planning too late as well. And then being able to connect the church as a whole when it comes to involvement. Being able to connect involvement will help with impact. We have to help people understand that why service matters. Why is it important for you to serve on a committee and serve in leadership positions? Make the connection clear. We know that involvement equals engagement. Engagement will equal giving and tithing, and giving will impact our ministries and sustainability of our churches. And so making sure that we offer the connection of why it is important to serve in the church, not only through our tithing, not only through what we do, but also how much we're involved, which will increase our engagement Engagement can increase giving and tithing. And once again, giving can increase ministry impact and sustainability. We need to make sure that we don't talk about the why, because it's not just a task that we do when we look for ministry leaders. And we need to show how each role supports the bigger mission of our church. And then we need to celebrate those outcomes, not just for participation, but did we really succeed in those areas that we were looking to succeed in? And so, really and truly, the bottom line is if we plan together and we work together, then we grow together. Stronger planning will equal stronger teams, which will equal a stronger ministry. And so that impact will last forever when we work together. There's no reason to have silos. The main goal is for us to grow our churches as well as grow the impact that we have in our communities.
Great. Thank you for that. Um, Again, thinking about why all of this work is so important. Some points that we want to try to make. The leadership quality of your church is directly related to how things happen, when they happen, and the reality of making disciples of Jesus Christ. Leadership really is for committed church members who demonstrate mature character. Um, we don't want to just, cave into people's pressures about letting so and so be on the committee because she's always been on the committee. And but we need to recognize the value of having people of mature Christian character, because there is something about accountability through this process. Um, Something else is that it protects people from burnout. There's a wisdom to the rotating classes. Um, we do sometimes see the value of people staying on board a little bit longer if that's what the situation calls for, and there are ways for us to think about such things. But on the whole, if somebody is able to serve, for example, on the finance committee for 3 years, on their first year, they get acquainted with how the profit and loss statement looks. They get acquainted with the different accounts. They get an understanding of how things work. By their second year, they're able to make more contributions and make an informed decision a little bit more easily. By the third year, building off those first 2 years, maybe the person could be the chair. Um, but here's the thing, if that person is just indefinitely on the committee, well, then that could possibly lead to some hard feelings, some frustration, and burnout. We don't want that for people. In fact, just the opposite. We're really eager for us to figure out a pipeline of leadership from person to person, and it's built through loving, trusting relationships. We're eager for this to happen so that we can make disciples. And again, the importance of strengthening trust and unity. How many of us have been in a church situation and you're just confounded by how frustrating something is, and you just come to realize we're just lacking trust? At the heart of this is a lack of trust. We're not willing to be fully engaged with one another. So, a clear process, confidentiality, intentional communication, absolutely. It reduces confusion and conflict. Um, we need that for each other. But also, all of this that we're talking about, it ensures that the church reflects its people. This is most evident, I think, in dynamic and healthy, vital churches. Sometimes when our churches get a bit stagnant or frustrated about some matters or in decline, this could be a bit challenging, right? But when we can really draw on a broad swath of people in a healthy way, then the church leadership is reflective of who we are. And we want to see this connection between the participation and mission. Like Shareka said, when people are engaged, they're more likely to give, right? And we talk about giving our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. These five dimensions of discipleship, that's how we describe being a disciple expressed through church membership. Um, and all of this prompts me to remember this really dear man at the church that I served most recently. His name was Henry. And Henry had served as the church treasurer for a very long time. And the church was content for him to continue in this role. Um, and we were going through the paces of nominations. I was overwhelmed with all kinds of issues that I was trying to deal with. Um, Henry had already agreed to be the trustee of the treasurer. I didn't think that it was going to be any sort of big ask, and quite frankly, I kind of forgot. I set that task aside. I didn't make it a priority talking with Henry. So then I kind of ran out of time, and I took for granted his goodwill, which was not good of me. And I just sort of caught him one day when he had come to the church to sign some checks. I said, "Hey, Henry, can you just plan to keep on being the church treasurer? I just wanted to make sure that you were okay with that. I should have asked you that earlier, but I just wanted to check with you. Is that okay?" And here's Henry's response. Are you ready? He goes like this. I think what you mean to say is, I'm inviting you to continue serving on behalf of the nominations committee. And I said, you are absolutely right. My mistake. We are always inviting people. It's important to think of it in that way, because in that way, absolutely, this work is not merely administrative, it's about formation. For formation of individuals, formation of teams for the sake of the mission. Um, I was listening to Shareka talk about some of her professional work um, as an equity champion on behalf of students at the community college where she works. And I thought that was such an absolute great connection to the kind of work we're talking about here. So, Shareka, I'd love for you to talk more about that. What does it mean to be an equity champion for the local church?
So, being an equity champion means we interpret that pattern on purpose. And so it means we see people differently, we invite differently, and we build leadership more broadly. And so with that, it means we expand who gets seen as leaders. We want to make sure that we extend a calling or capacity, making sure that we ensure that everybody is being noticed. And so that comes for not making sure that we recycle the same people all the time, but looking at new members and looking and not overlooking individuals that we have been observing when it comes to their spiritual gifts. The second thing is it corrects imbalance and opportunity. So some for most of us, for most of our churches, small groups of people, 80% of the people are doing the work. And so most of that work while others stay on the sidelines looking. That's not being an equity champion. By being an equity champion means actively correcting that. By pulling people to the side and saying, hey, I know you are overworked. I know you are burnt out. How about we invite some other people who are just sitting on the pews and may not be working because no one has asked them? And so sometimes it has to take the opportunity to start, observing and looking around our congregations to see who is not actively involved in a ministry and maybe having a conversation with them one afternoon after church gets out just to say, hey, I see that you're not a part of such and such group. The third thing is it strengthens decision making and ministry outcomes. When leadership reflects different ages, as well as perspectives, as well as backgrounds, it becomes better when it comes to problem solving because you have all aspects of what is being done around the church. Stronger connections to the full congregation. Being able to have different representations and other different age groups, having that intergenerational aspect of all the seats at the table will actually be able to be a vital church because you're getting all aspects. Number four, it builds trust. People engage more when they believe in what is being done. The selection process can be fair, as well as leadership can also is not reserved just for certain people. So when you think about leadership as a whole, we think about who do we see that we can acknowledge, that we can help build and develop. That's what I think we need to start looking at, the broader aspect. Yes, Johnny can has been the ministry leader for over higher education and campus ministry for 15 years. However, we just have some brand new individuals who have graduated from college, who know how to work with college students. Why not allow them the opportunity to serve, but also give him an opportunity to stay on board as well? And so equity is just not structural, it is spiritual. And when we believe people are gifted and grounded in their spirituality by God, then our committee's jobs is actually to make a space for those individuals to utilize those spiritual gifts that they've been equipped with, but not limit them to the opportunities to be developed. And so, nominations and leaderships is when it comes to development, it's not neutral. We need to make sure that we're able to widen the access, but also make sure that we're not repeating the same people, the same voices, and the same networks, and then using those overused people who we're already recycling. Go ahead and look at that second list that Mark was talking about and begin developing the leaders that we know that we can have if we utilize those spiritual gifts inventories and making sure that we use the opportunity to be equitable when it comes to our ministry and committees within our church.
All right, we've been at it for just under an hour. We wanted to leave time and space for us to chat together. I'm going to stop the share screen. And what questions might you have?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Rob Alexander with Sedge Garden, and it's my first time on nominations committee. And we're exactly the same size, traditional and or an early service. I know nobody on the early service. I know no one that has come out of college and is gifted. I know nobody other than the old traditional people when we broke into early service 15, 16, 18 years ago. I mean, I have no, are you all two services, anybody? And how do you, I want to depend on others on the nomination committee to step into the, who's gifted in the first service because I'm at a loss. I mean, I have no input in that at all. So I feel I'm going to miss somebody. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, I think what you're naming is something that many churches experience, and I think it'd be good to have honest conversation within the committee about that. Um,
Yeah.
Not to blame anybody, but just say this is the reality that we find ourselves in right now. How can we go about making sure that we take everybody into account? How can we make sure that we get to know each other a little bit better?
Yeah.
Um, and again, that kind of work is not going to happen over the course of just a couple of weeks in September as you're cramming to get charge conference done.
Yeah, it's going to start early. Keith wants to start early.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got to start early. Yeah. Um, but it's going to take work and it's going to take many people. Winnie, I think you had a question, and then I see a couple in the chat too.
Yes, Mark, thanks. I have a question about Something like a person to run the live stream on Sunday, or maybe somebody's studying facilities management. I've been talking to the college reps. I can't remember the formal name of those guys, but could we bring in some interns for things that are not confidential church functions? Because we have a small rural church. Most of them are very mature. We do have some children, but they're really children. They're from toddlers to about, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old. So we don't really have a youth group, but I figured if we could set up, and I spoke to Kim Ingram about it, and she said that sounds interesting once we get through a couple of test periods with it. But I don't know if that sounds interesting means it's allowable or just how to do it. And as
When
we're training people, can we use the job descriptions? I can't remember where I got them from. Maybe umc.org or something like that, one of our UMC resource places. So could we put together team manuals that have the actual job description in it, and sort of some ideas on what we would like to do as a church for like the outreach, what kind of events are we thinking about, or
Okay,
something like that?
so let me try to answer your questions, Winnie. The first one about interns, hey, that's a great idea, and that would need to be talked about in consultation with your pastor and your PPRC,
Okay.
because the PPRC, they oversee all people who are hired by the church. So even if it's an intern who's unpaid, that's a different kind of a relationship with an individual who's serving other than being on a committee. So that would need to be a conversation with the pastor and PPRC. But
Okay.
I think that's definitely a great idea to think about interns functioning in different ways. With regards to like having descriptions of what the committees do, like job descriptions. Okay, the Book of Discipline offers really helpful guidance, and you can find on Cokesbury some published books and little pamphlets
Hmm.
that offer that as well.
Okay.
Um, it it is drawn off of what the Book of Discipline says, but then it offers some commentary and advice, and that's helpful too.
Because we're going to have some cross training
Yeah,
among committees, because we're building the end of last year. I think we took in 5 new members, but
great, congratulations.
no, it's not me, it's my pastor. She's amazing. But
Praise be to God, absolutely.
we're just trying to figure out
Yeah,
how we sort of replant and reinvigorate
yeah.
the entire group.
Well, and to Sharika's point, it takes everybody working together as a team to do what you're talking about, right? I want to make sure we have time for everybody. I see Jen Casey, one of my friends from Saints Home. She was making the important point um, about people being accountable to the Lord, being accountable to each other. That's absolutely
Yes.
important. And so thank you for that, Jen.
Sure. If
Thank
I could
you.
add
And
something.
sure.
Go ahead. I was going to add something. Well, we obviously have what I consider a very small church. So I'm one of those people who wears too many hats, and I'm in a family situation that has kept me out of church a lot recently. So technically, I'm the church secretary. So people assume that means that I'm the secretary for finance, the church council, charge conference. Am I missing some other big accountabilities? Possibly. But I'm also the one who does the bulletin every week. I'm the president of United Women of Faith. So I'm just saying it has been a struggle for me since December with the death of a loved one, and my being involved in as the healthcare power of attorney for my mother-in-law as well as my sister. So I have a lot on my plate right now, and
You
I'm
do.
praying that God will give me a solution because I feel like I've been tested and tried, and I know He doesn't give us any more than we can bear. But this is starting to be very challenging for me. I'm also a member of the Outreach and Witness, and I'm very much interested in creation care and haven't really made much movement in that. But of course, Pastor Phil McCarver tells me to just hang in there. And I said, that sounds good and it looks good, but I need some other resources to help me with this journey.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just challenging, very challenging for me right now because I love my family and what we do, but I also love my church.
Well,
That's it.
first of all, Jen, thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you. We
Sure.
need more people like you who are committed. And at the same time, I hope that this time of challenge is only a brief chapter, and I hope you get some relief soon. But first of all, just please know how grateful we are for your faithfulness. And you know, I'm not saying that it would be the case with Jen, but I can imagine some other churches with people who are that involved, and there comes a new person who can serve, and then the person who's been serving is not willing to hand it over to somebody else, right?
Right.
We need to be on guard about that. And part of the role of your committee is to, again, hold people accountable. So the question was asked, will this information be provided on the website? A recording of this Zoom will be available on the conference website. The PowerPoint slides, here's what is being suggested by the fabulous Londa Wallace. And I want to thank you for this. If you could put your email address in the chat, we can send the PowerPoint to you. Okay? Just put your email in the chat and we'll get the PowerPoint sent to you. Thanks, Londa. The question about proper method to add people to boards when somebody is unable to continue. That's a really great question. You definitely need to be in consultation with your pastor about this. And what it really comes down to is the nominations committee inviting someone else to serve, and then that name being presented to your local church's administrative council. Some call it church council, some call it administrative board, some call it leadership team. Whatever it happens to be for your church, you bring that nomination, and then that person can be elected to serve for the duration of the outgoing person's term. It's worth saying there is such a thing as nominations coming from the floor of charge conference or from the floor of a church council meeting. Quite frankly, that can be a little bit messy. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying that it could lead to some questions and even hurt feelings, surprises that are not welcome. Anybody who is nominated ought to be fully in the know that their name is being presented. No one should be surprised. All right. It is almost 8:10. I'm mindful of the time. Any other questions?
I just wanted to share. I have one of those bookmarks was talking about. Oh,
Great.
yeah, you got one too. Okay. He talked about the book of discipline and the guidelines for the every position. Every committee has a guideline.
Yes.
Great.
Great book.
Londa, thanks for that.
Now I just have to read it. That's all. I haven't started
Right.
yet. I was starting with this tonight. I was starting with this tonight. Here we go.
Good.
Is that the book that came from Coach Berry? Oh,
Mhm.
I think I've seen that somewhere. On the
Yeah.
conference website, maybe?
You can
How
order
do
it
Probably
we
through
get
the
it to
Cokesbury.
internet.
Go ahead, Linda. Linda Wallace, what were you saying?
I just stepped away for cut my camera off for a minute. Oh, and why is it not cutting back on? You won't be able to see it, but it's a full set. The book of discipline is number one, but every committee
Mm-hmm.
there's a guideline. So your church can get a full set with every position in it.
And
And where does it come
Cokesbury.
from?
Cokesbury.
Cokesbury. Okay, I got you. Thank you so much.
could you put the name of it on in the chat? The actual name of the book
It's
or
a
the
full
snippet?
set. It's the guidelines.
Nominations
Guidelines
and
for leading
explanations.
your congregation.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you for that helpful info. All right. Well, I want to offer my gratitude to Shareka Brown, faithful church member at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Winston. Thank you, thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Londa Wallace, who works with me in the district office, for facilitating tonight. It's an honor to have this time with you. And if you want to track me down and send me an email with a follow-up question, I would be more than happy to continue being in touch with you. Okay? Let me offer a prayer and we'll be on our way. Let us pray. Loving God, we've dedicated this time to seeking to understand better. We thank you for the gift of your church and the place that we all have in it. And we especially thank you for this particular kind of structure. When it works well, it's a beautiful thing, and we give you all the glory and praise. Sometimes, oh God, because we are fallen people, we are sinners in need of redemption. Sometimes we just don't get it right. And for this, we ask for your forgiveness. But through it all, oh God, we persevere. And even though we find ourselves in the storm, we continue rowing and we trust that you are with us, saying, Peace, be still. So help us in our own roles, especially through this committee, to look, to identify, to discern, to invite, so that others can be a part of your good work. All this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Good night.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Good night,
Mark and Shareka.
Everybody.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Great.
Good to be
Thank you,
with
Good
you.
night.
Nice
guys.
seeing y'all
Thank
again.
you.